Marcus Rivera thought he had it all figured out. At 28, he was a successful marketing director at a tech startup in downtown Seattle, driving a sleek BMW and living in a modern apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. But the crown jewel of his carefully constructed life was Vanessa Chen, a stunning interior designer who turned heads wherever they went. They'd been together for 2 years, and Marcus genuinely believed Vanessa was the one. She was beautiful, intelligent, and seemed to complement his ambitious lifestyle perfectly. Their Instagram photos garnered hundreds of likes, showing them at trendy restaurants, weekend getaways to wine country, and cozy nights in their perfectly decorated apartment. Friends constantly told them they were relationship goals. But beneath the glossy surface, cracks had begun to show. Marcus had noticed Vanessa becoming increasingly distant over the past few months. She'd cancel their dinner plans last minute, claiming work emergencies. Her phone was always face down during their conversations, and she'd developed a habit of stepping into another room to take calls. When Marcus asked about it, she'd brush off his concerns with a laugh and a kiss, saying he was being paranoid. The first real red flag came on a Thursday evening in October. Marcus had planned a surprise dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant to celebrate landing a major client. When he arrived at Vanessa's office to pick her up, her assistant informed him that she'd left early with a friend from college. Marcus called her phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. She finally texted him at midnight. "Sorry, babe, ran into my old roommate Jessica, lost track of time catching up. Rain check on dinner?" The message felt hollow, impersonal. The Vanessa he knew would have called, would have been more apologetic, would have suggested an immediate makeup plan. Over the next few weeks, these incidents multiplied. Vanessa would mention names Marcus had never heard before: college friends, work colleagues, clients who needed emergency consultations that lasted until the early morning hours. She'd return home with elaborate stories about her whereabouts, but the details never quite added up. Her explanations were too polished, too rehearsed. Marcus found himself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, while Vanessa slept peacefully, beside him. He'd built his entire adult identity around being successful, being in control, being the kind of man who had everything figured out. The possibility that his perfect girlfriend might be cheating on him shattered that carefully maintained self-image. He started paying closer attention to her behavior, noting the small inconsistencies, the way she'd quickly close her laptop when he walked into a room, how she'd suddenly become interested in working late on projects she'd never mentioned before. Marcus had always prided himself on being rational, on thinking through problems logically. But this situation was pushing him into unfamiliar emotional territory, where logic seemed inadequate against the growing knot of suspicion and hurt in his chest. The breaking point came on a rainy Friday evening in November. Marcus had planned to surprise Vanessa at her favorite wine bar after her supposed client meeting. He wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, to prove to himself that his suspicions were unfounded. Instead, he found her sitting intimately close to a tall, dark-haired man he'd never seen before. They weren't kissing or holding hands, but there was an unmistakable chemistry between them. The way she leaned into him when she laughed, how she touched his arm during conversation, the secretive smiles they shared. It was a side of Vanessa that Marcus recognized but hadn't seen directed at him in months. Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, rain dripping from his jacket, watching the woman he loved flirt openly with another man. The rational part of his mind cataloged every detail: the stranger's expensive suit, the way Vanessa had styled her hair differently, how she'd worn the dress Marcus had bought her for their anniversary. The emotional part of his mind felt like it was free-falling. He left without confronting them, driving aimlessly through Seattle's rain-soaked streets until he found himself at his best friend Dylan's apartment. Dylan Martinez had been his college roommate and was now a software engineer at Amazon. More importantly, he was the kind of friend who would tell Marcus the truth even when it hurt. "I've been wondering when you'd figure it out," Dylan said, after Marcus explained what he'd witnessed. They were sitting in Dylan's cluttered living room, surrounded by empty pizza boxes and video game controllers. "She's been playing games with you for months, man." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Dylan pulled out his phone and showed Marcus several Instagram stories from mutual friends. There was Vanessa at various events over the past few weeks: art gallery openings, rooftop, parties, casual dinners, always with the same mysterious man. In some photos, they looked like a couple. In others, they maintained just enough distance to preserve plausible deniability. "She wants you to find out," Dylan explained. "Think about it. She's being obvious enough that someone would eventually see and tell you, but careful enough to deny everything if confronted. Classic jealousy manipulation. She wants to see if you'll fight for her." The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't cheating in the traditional sense. It was psychological warfare. Vanessa was deliberately trying to make him jealous, to test his devotion, to see how much she could push him before he'd react. She wanted drama. Wanted him to become the kind of desperate, possessive boyfriend who'd beg her to stay. Marcus spent the weekend analyzing every interaction they'd had over the past few months through this new lens. The canceled plans, the mysterious friends, the elaborate stories. They weren't covering up an affair. They were carefully constructed performances designed to make him doubt himself, to make him more grateful for her attention when she chose to give it. By Sunday night, Marcus had made a decision. If Vanessa wanted to play games, he'd play along, but not the way she expected. Instead of confronting her or begging for answers, he'd give her exactly what she was pretending to want: freedom. Monday morning, Marcus implemented his plan with the same strategic precision he used in his marketing campaigns. Instead of acting hurt or suspicious, he became the perfect supportive boyfriend. When Vanessa mentioned another client dinner that week, he enthusiastically encouraged her to go, saying how proud he was of her growing business. "You've been working so hard lately," he told her over breakfast, his voice warm and genuine. "You deserve to enjoy yourself. Don't worry about me. I'll probably work late myself." The confusion in Vanessa's eyes was immediate and satisfying. She'd been expecting jealousy, accusations, or at least some sign that her games were working. Instead, Marcus was giving her exactly what she claimed to want: space and support. While Vanessa was out with her mysterious companion that Wednesday, Marcus had his own agenda. He'd reached out to Rebecca Torres, a former colleague who'd recently started her own public relations firm. They'd always had good professional chemistry, and she'd made it clear she was interested in more than just business. Marcus met Rebecca at an upscale cocktail lounge in Capitol Hill, the kind of place where Seattle's young professionals networked and socialized. Rebecca was everything Vanessa wasn't: straightforward, ambitious without being manipulative, and refreshingly honest about her intentions. "I have to admit, I was surprised when you called," Rebecca said, stirring her martini. She was attractive in an understated way, with intelligent brown eyes and an easy smile. "I thought you were taken." "It's complicated," Marcus replied, which was both true and diplomatically vague. They talked about business, about their career goals, about books and travel plans. The conversation flowed naturally, without the undercurrent of tension that had characterized his recent interactions with Vanessa. Marcus made sure they were seen together. He posted a subtle Instagram story of their shared appetizer, tagged the location, and mentioned what a great evening he was having. He knew their mutual professional network would take notice, and word would eventually reach Vanessa. The beauty of his strategy was its authenticity. He wasn't pretending to cheat or manufacturing fake drama. He was simply exploring a genuine connection with someone who wasn't playing psychological games with him. If Vanessa wanted to act single, he'd start considering what being single might actually look like. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus continued this dual approach. With Vanessa, he remained supportive and undemanding, never questioning her increasingly, frequent work commitments or showing any signs of jealousy. With Rebecca, he explored what felt like the beginning of something real, someone who answered his calls, who was excited to see him, who didn't treat their relationship like a chess match. The shift in dynamics was remarkable. Vanessa, deprived of the jealous reaction she'd been orchestrating, began escalating her behavior. Her stories about the mysterious man became more elaborate and obviously fabricated. She'd leave her phone unlocked with flirtatious text messages clearly visible, practically begging Marcus to snoop and confront her. But Marcus had moved beyond that game. He was discovering that life without constant manipulation and emotional uncertainty was actually quite pleasant. Rebecca represented everything he'd forgotten he wanted in a partner: honesty, genuine affection, and mutual respect. By the end of November, Marcus realized he'd stumbled upon something profound. In trying to make Vanessa jealous, he'd accidentally found someone who made him question why he'd been settling for games and drama in the first place. Vanessa's breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in early December. Marcus was getting ready for what he'd casually mentioned was dinner with a colleague when she finally cracked. She'd been watching him get dressed, noting the extra care he was taking with his appearance, the subtle cologne, the confident smile he wore these days. "Who is she?" Vanessa demanded, blocking the bedroom doorway with her arms crossed. Her perfectly styled hair and designer outfit couldn't hide the desperation in her eyes. "And don't tell me it's work. You never dress like that for work." Marcus paused in adjusting his tie, meeting her gaze in the mirror with calm composure. "Her name is Rebecca Torres. She runs a PR firm downtown. We've been spending time together." His tone was matter-of-fact, neither defensive nor apologetic. "Spending time together?" Vanessa's voice rose an octave. "What the hell does that mean? Are you cheating on me?" The irony of the question hung in the air between them. Marcus turned to face her directly, and for the first time in months, he felt completely in control of the situation. "No, Vanessa, I'm not cheating, but I am exploring what it feels like to spend time with someone who actually wants to be with me." "What's that supposed to mean?" But her defensive tone suggested she knew exactly what it meant. Marcus sat on the edge of their bed, or what had been their bed. Lately, he'd been staying in the guest room, claiming he didn't want to disturb her early morning client calls. In reality, he'd grown tired of lying next to someone who treated their relationship like a performance. "It means I know about David," he said quietly. David Chen, no relation to Vanessa despite the shared surname, was the mysterious man she'd been using as a prop in her jealousy games. Through Dylan's girlfriend, who worked in interior design, Marcus had learned that David was a divorced architect who'd been unknowingly cast in Vanessa's psychological drama. Vanessa's face went pale, then flushed red. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know you've been trying to make me jealous," Marcus continued. "The canceled plans, the mysterious client meetings, the obvious flirtation at public places where you knew someone would see. You wanted me to fight for you, to prove how much I needed you by getting desperate and possessive." She opened her mouth to deny it, but Marcus held up a hand. "Here's the thing, Vanessa. It worked, just not the way you intended. You made me realize what I was missing, what it felt like to be with someone who doesn't turn love into a strategic game. Rebecca doesn't cancel plans to make me appreciate her more. She doesn't manufacture drama to test my devotion. She just wants to be with me, and I want to be with her." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of 2 years of relationship finally reaching its inevitable conclusion. Vanessa's carefully constructed manipulation had backfired spectacularly. Instead of making Marcus more dependent on her, she'd pushed him to discover what healthy affection actually looked like. "You can't be serious," she whispered. "We're supposed to get married. We have plans. We're perfect together." Marcus stood up, straightening his jacket. "No, Vanessa. We look perfect together. There's a difference. Perfect couples don't need to manipulate each other to feel loved. He moved toward the door, but she grabbed his arm. Please don't do this. I needed to know you cared. Things felt stale between us. I wanted to feel wanted again. For a moment, Marcus felt a flicker of the old sympathy. But then he remembered all the nights he'd lain awake, questioning his own sanity, all the times he'd made excuses for her behavior, all the energy he'd wasted trying to decode her games instead of simply being happy. If you wanted to feel wanted, you could have talked to me. Instead, you chose to manipulate me. That's not love, Vanessa. That's control. Marcus moved out the following weekend. Dylan and a few other friends helped him pack his belongings, though there wasn't much that felt truly his anymore. The modern apartment, the carefully curated furniture, even most of the photos on the walls, they all belonged to the image he and Vanessa had created together, not to any authentic life they'd shared. Vanessa made one final attempt to salvage the relationship, promising to change, to be more honest, to attend couples therapy. She even offered to cut all contact with David, as if he had been the real problem rather than just a symptom of her need for drama and control. I know I messed up, she said, crying in the doorway as Marcus loaded the last box into his car. But we can fix this. I love you, Marcus, I really do. Marcus believed she meant it in her own way, but he'd learned the difference between loving someone and needing to control them. Vanessa loved the version of him that she could manipulate, the Marcus who would chase after her and fight for her attention. She didn't love the man who had found happiness elsewhere and was willing to walk away. I know you do, he replied gently. But love isn't supposed to be a game you win or lose. It's supposed to be something you share. 6 months later, Marcus was living in a smaller apartment in Fremont, splitting his time between his thriving career and a genuine relationship with Rebecca. They'd taken things slowly, building trust and intimacy without manufactured drama. She met his friends, he met hers, and they discovered that happiness didn't require constant emotional warfare. Marcus learned through mutual friends that Vanessa had briefly tried to rekindle things with David, but he'd been understandably put off by the revelation that he'd been unknowingly participating in relationship manipulation. She'd eventually started dating a younger guy who seemed more willing to play the jealousy games she craved. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. By trying to make him jealous, Vanessa had inadvertently given him permission to discover what he actually wanted in a partner. Her manipulation had backfired completely, pushing him toward the very thing she'd been trying to prevent: genuine happiness with someone else. Looking back, Marcus realized that the hardest part hadn't been walking away from Vanessa. It had been recognizing that he deserved better than games and manufactured drama. He'd been so invested in the image of their perfect relationship that he'd forgotten what it felt like to simply be loved and accepted without conditions or tests. The lesson was profound and lasting. When someone shows you who they are through their actions, believe them. And when they try to manipulate your emotions to test your devotion, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for both of you, is to walk away and find someone who doesn't need to play games to feel secure in love. Marcus never looked back, and he never regretted choosing authenticity over drama. In the end, Vanessa's elaborate scheme had given him the greatest gift possible, the realization that he was worth more than he'd been settling for.